The new card game Chess of Destiny, which he had been waiting for 2 weeks. A few moments later, he opened his eyes and did not understand what had become of him. Even more surprised, the main character asked himself what had happened to him. At first, he met a beautiful sister who told him to go with her, that she would redeem him. He thought he would be able to reach the heights of life, thanks to the system. Who knew that the system would activate a self-destruct mode, and he became curious about what to do now. This is not that story. Others go through with their own plugins. He didn't understand how he became someone's plugin. Well, in any case, he can see that the girl is talented and smart, and she is one of the most gifted cultivators in the world. Meeting him is her destiny. He will give her a wonderful opportunity. The main character feels a sharp pain piercing his head, as if it were about to split open. It seems that he has fallen ill. At that moment, someone asks the girl what just happened. She says that they caught a young Chongzi, and for some reason, it went berserk. But now it has calmed down. He doesn't understand how he suddenly became like this. His thoughts are confused. New cards. Chess of Destiny. 2 weeks spent without rest. A thought creeps into his head. Could this be death? But soon he realizes that he has turned into something else. The main character comes to his senses, feeling a strange glow flash before his eyes. Unexpectedly, the system announces that it has detected a character of destiny and is ready for activation. The hero does not understand what is happening. A miniature figure appears before him, resembling a girl trapped in a cage. He doesn't know what to do, but decides to focus on this avatar. A card interface appears before his eyes, reminiscent of the game Chess of Destiny. Gradually, he realizes that he is inside the game. The system requires him to establish a connection with the character. Otherwise, activation will not occur, and self-destruct mode will be triggered. The hero is lost, not knowing how to fulfill this condition. Suddenly, the system announces that the character of Destiny is leaving the area of operation and starts the countdown to self-destruction. At that moment, he asks her not to leave. At this moment, the heroine hears a voice begging her not to leave. The voice belongs to the cat in the cage. The girl asks if it can really talk. He addresses her, saying that she has a unique talent for cultivation and that their meeting is not accidental. He calls it fate and promises a great future. After that, she said that if she saved his life, he would give her some kind of magical technique or heavenly treasure. The main character simply agreed. He asked her with kind eyes if she would let him go, but she said she would not. She doesn't believe his words. She suspects deception, because over the years she has encountered cunning creatures. She says that he is material intended for processing by a senior student named Lee, and that if something goes wrong, it will end badly. The hero realizes that she may be telling the truth. Nevertheless, the girl decides to help, and gives him a powerful toxic medicine that she had been keeping for herself. She apologizes. After that, the system detects that the character of Destiny is leaving the area of effect. The system registers a new item and reports that a connection has been established. At this moment, the girl loses faith in fate and says that it is all a lie. Then Senior Guanxi appears and asks Bufengyan how she dares. He begins to reproach the girl for not coming when Brother Lee asked her to meet him yesterday, to which she replied that this student had his own concerns. Hearing this, he hits her and says that this is nonsense, and that she is clearly disobeying orders. Guanxi said that Brother Lee is the chief disciple of the inner sect. He wanted to meet her. It was her chance, and others can't even dream of it. After that, she asked maliciously what other chance there was, other than to be his bodyguard. The man touched the girl's cheek and said why she shouldn't just listen to Brother Lee. At least she would have a good time. She pushed his hand away and said that even though she was an outer disciple, she still had her dignity, and asked him to behave properly. Biu Yang knew she couldn't compete with him. She gave the poison she was going to use to kill herself to a small animal. The manager attacked again. When she was on the verge of despair, a voice rang out. Step forward 3. Break the stance. Dodge. Advance. Horizontal strike. Following the instructions of the unknown voice, Bu Yang was able to subdue the manager. Sensing something strange, the manager lost his hostility and left. Bu Yang sincerely asked which senior had helped her and if he could show himself. At that moment, the main character, who was still nearby, appeared before her. Bu Yang, seeing him in a state similar to a soul, hastily asked how this was possible. The main character replied that he had drunk the poison she had given him. Bu Yang was stunned. To calm her down, he explained that it was his secret technique. In fact, it was a skill granted by the system, immunity to all poisons. After consuming the poison, it activated and allowed him to neutralize the poisoned food. Seeing that the main character was fine, Bu Yang wiped away her tears and opened the locked cage, begging him to leave this place as soon as possible. The main character asked seriously what would happen to her. She said she had insulted Lee's older brother and that neither of them could escape. If she stayed, she would buy him time so he could hide using the system. The main character thought that with the system in his advantage, he had nothing to fear from some older brother Lee, and reassured her, telling her to just trust him. Meanwhile, Li's older brother was boiling with rage. He expected Bu Yang to disobey his orders. The woman next to him added fuel to the fire, whispering about Bu Yang's disobedience. But the older brother Li seemed perverse, taking special pleasure in her rebellious nature. Since she didn't want to come to him, he decided to go to her himself. In a small hut in the mountains, in Bu Yang's secret hideout, the main character lay on the bed. He thought that this girl's figure was simply too seductive. At that moment, he remembered that there were still many new tasks left in the system. Opening it, he discovered that his main task was to prevent the descent of the heavenly disaster of the underworld. The demonic invasion, the descent of the underworld, and even the appearance of the devil gods were just the tip of the iceberg compared to this disaster. He was frightened and decided that he had to find a way to survive. Bu Yang called him, saying that she had prepared water for bathing and suggested that they bathe together. She approached him with a gentle smile on her face. This pure and innocent scene was almost unbearable for the protagonist, and he almost lost his composure. He looked at Bu Yang's worried expression and couldn't help but ask what she was thinking. It turned out that she was worried about her older brother Li because her current strength was too weak. Her older brother Li was 2 full levels above her. The protagonist looked at Bu Yang's character panel and thought that with her talent, if she had a high-level cultivation technique, she could quickly improve her abilities. Unfortunately, the system had not yet given him such techniques, and he had to find another way. After bathing, the main character asked Bu Yang to show him what she had learned. The only cultivation technique available to her at the moment was the yellow rank wind and tree arts. However, with his guidance, she was still able to make rapid progress. After the training, Bu Yang had indeed advanced, and they were already celebrating their success when suddenly a cloud of poison entered the room. The main character quickly ordered Bu Yang to hold her breath. Li's older brother was standing at the door. He was the one who had just released the poison. Judging by Bu Yang's condition, he decided that she had already lost consciousness and was about to rush in to take advantage of her. But when he opened the door, he saw that Bu Yang had not fallen, but was standing holding a sword pointed at him. Li's older brother hastily snatched the sword from her, then drew his own blade and rushed to attack. Bu Yang instinctively raised her sword, blocking the blow with a horizontal parry, then used the rising crescent technique. She aimed precisely at Li's older brother's joints. This was the first time Bi Fan had used her sword skills. Li's older brother slashed with his blade, cutting through Bi Fan's veil and exposing the lower part of her face. Bu Yang was instantly affected. He looked at Bi Fan's attribute panel, poisoned by the poison of the underworld. If the antidote is not administered, the character will lose consciousness in a few seconds, and her blood will boil and explode in a few seconds. The girl was poisoned, and the lecherous older brother Li mercilessly continued his attack. How to break this situation? Seeing Bi Fan in a weakened state, Li's older brother intensified his attack, unleashing a fiery palm strike towards Bu Yang. Even using all her strength, Bu Yang could only barely block it, followed by a quick kick. Bu Yang was forced to retreat, her body burning with poison. Seeing that Bu Yang was about to collapse, I desperately searched for a solution. Brother Li looked at Bu Yang with a lustful expression and said that if she didn't obey, it would be worse for her. Then he struck with his saber, causing the ground to shake. The protagonist collapsed, bleeding profusely. Seeing that Brother Li had raised his saber for the final blow, she temporarily used her body to block the blow with force, injuring herself. Seeing that Bu Yang was still trying to resist, but that the depraved older brother Li had become even more excited, he said that since she still wanted to resist, it was even more interesting than if she had simply obeyed. He struggled to his feet, quickly calmed her down, and told her to listen carefully. Take a step to the side and down. At that moment, as if possessed by a cheat, Bu Yang dodged the impending attack. Another rising crescent interrupted the opponent's movement. In fact, it was his innate ability as a cheat. He could sense the slightest changes in advance and react quickly. Seeing that he couldn't even defeat an ordinary outer disciple, Li's older brother flew into a rage. Dodge, then retreat. Following his instructions, Bu Yang completely avoided the attacks and even went on the offensive. Li's older brother unleashed a powerful technique, the mountain-splitting saber, aimed directly at her. Bu Yang met force with force. Just as the poison in her body was about to explode, she unleashed her strongest technique. The return of Mortal Sin Crescent Moon struck Li right in the chest. Blood spurted everywhere. The depraved elder brother Li was pinned to the ground and killed instantly. As soon as Li's older brother died, the sect's alarm bell rang. Bu Yang immediately told the main character that they needed to leave quickly. It turned out that each inner disciple had a life lamp. After death, the lamp went out. The life lamps also contained a tracking formation that roughly showed the location of the owner. Bu Yang said she was afraid they would be found soon. At that moment, a dark shadow flashed in the distance. Elder Fan had arrived. Fan Bo Ha, Master Li's senior brother, appeared in front of the hut. He asked where the murderers were. By this time, they had already left the sect, leaving only the body of Elder Brother Li pinned to the floor. Seeing the pitiful state of his disciple, Fan instantly flew into a rage. With a roar, the hut in front of him was reduced to rubble. He ordered everyone to disperse and search. One disciple came with a report that Senior Brother Li had come to the sect today specifically to discipline an external disciple. He couldn't believe that an external disciple could defeat him. Fan Bo Ha suspected that Bu Yang must have conspired with outsiders to harm his disciple. He immediately ordered all the disciples of the Divine Combat sect to pursue the killer and leave no one alive. He even offered spirit stones and treasures to encourage participation. With such a large reward, countless disciples joined the search. In the forest at the foot of the mountain, a group of disciples searched for Bu Yang. Some thought she had already escaped. Suddenly, when one disciple pushed aside some glowing moss, he discovered Bu Yang. She was actually hiding nearby. Instantly, the group rushed forward for the reward. Bu Yang raised her sword and looked at the group of inner disciples preparing for battle. The battle began. Under his guidance, Bu Yang easily dealt with the so-called inner disciples. As the system, the protagonist knew that this was the effect of the new function. All the techniques and methods Bu Yang had learned were displayed here, so I could directly use any cultivation techniques she had taught me. I could even optimize and improve them, deriving the most effective combat strategies. Bu Yang, a character with the luck of a protagonist, made a breakthrough in cultivation immediately after the battle ended. I was sharing my combat experience with Bu Yang when we were interrupted by footsteps. An elder appeared before us. Bu Yang recognized him as Elder Lin, the senior internal elder responsible for supervising the training of disciples. He himself was quite strong. Moreover, he was very close to Elder Fan, the master of Li's older brother. Elder Lin drew his weapon, his expression completely changing. Without saying a word, he swung his sword. He said that he had heard about a promising talent among the outer disciples, and thought that she would be outstanding, but it turned out that she was nothing special. At that moment, a deep wound appeared on Bi Fan's left arm. Bi Fan consoled herself that she had simply been momentarily distracted and had performed poorly. Her recent breakthrough in cultivation made her particularly vulnerable. She had no desire to die here. Watching the elder standing in front of her, I realized that her efforts alone were not enough now. However, with talent, the system always intervenes at the right time. Meanwhile, the inner sect had already reported to Elder Funu about the clash between Elder Lin and Bai Yang in the forest at the foot of the mountain. The battle continued, and Bai Yang, possessing only basic techniques, was fighting off her opponent's fierce attacks with her last ounce of strength. After a series of fierce exchanges, Elder Lin noticed that her cultivation level had recently risen, and only someone with exceptional talent and a strong character could make such a breakthrough right in the middle of a battle. At the same time, he grew suspicious of a possible conspiracy with outsiders and deliberate harm to the Divine Combat sect. Bai Yang tried to explain that she was only defending herself, but the elder refused to listen and only intensified his attack. Gradually, it became clear that there was a hidden meaning to what was happening. Despite his outward severity, Elder Lin did not try to deliver a fatal blow. He even used the internal technique of 1,000 hearts, forcing Bai Yang to retreat and seemingly lose the will to resist. Upon closer observation, it became apparent that his movements were instructional in nature, presenting her with a rare opportunity to comprehend the techniques of the internal sect. Bai Yang quickly regained her clarity of thought, and her rapid return to combat focus only confirmed the elder's true purpose. At that moment, the system activated a special test aimed at accelerating the student's development. Despite his strictness, Lin bore no ill will toward her and deliberately passed on his skills. After several exchanges of blows, Bai Yang grasped the structure of his movements and managed to repeat the technique he had just demonstrated. The elder was surprised. Only someone with rare insight and exceptional talent could master the technique in such a short time and under such intense pressure. From that moment on, her real growth began. The system rewarded her for her success. Bai Yang fully mastered the 1,000 Hearts technique and gained a special skill that clears the mind of unnecessary distractions. Soon, Elder Feng arrived, dissatisfied with Lin wasting his energy on a student from an external sect. Almost simultaneously, the sect leader appeared and ordered the fight to stop. A tense confrontation arose between the elders. Feng insisted that Bai Yang was guilty of his disciple's death and demanded immediate punishment. The leader, however, pointed to many ambiguities that required investigation and considered premature conclusions unacceptable. Neither side was willing to back down, and the situation was rapidly escalating. At the height of the tension, there was a sudden explosion. The system intervened, interrupting the growing conflict and preventing the situation from escalating further. Streams of spiritual energy began to condense, and the creature took on human form. This was the main character's unique ability, sustained by the expenditure of spiritual power. The appearance of the talking dragon shocked Feng Bo, who was stunned by what was happening, and could not believe that standing before him was someone who dared to behave so insolently toward the elders of the sect. Feng Bohe, unable to contain his rage, rushed forward and attacked. However, his opponent easily picked up the sword lying on the ground and parried the blow. With a single swing of the Thousand Hearts technique, he threw the surrounding disciples aside. What they saw provoked ridicule. It became clear that the modern heirs of Fan Yu had reduced the once great techniques to a shameful level, and in their hands, the great divine martial sect could soon fall into decline. The sect's disciples were speechless with shock. The situation was interrupted by the voice of the sect leader. He gave his name as Fan Jing and introduced himself as a descendant of Fan Yu. His behavior betrayed caution. The leader believed that he was dealing with a being incomparably superior to anyone else present. He suspected that Elder Feng had brought someone with a mysterious and powerful background into the sect. The main character was invited into the inner circle of the sect, a territory where external disciples almost never went. For Bai Yang, this came as a real shock. The status of the being accompanying her was so high that even the sect leader seated her next to him. The inner disciples looked at him with a mixture of envy and discontent. When the leader mentioned his origins, it became clear that he only shared the same surname as the sect's founder, but was not his direct descendant. He addressed the stranger with respect, seeking to understand the purpose of his visit. According to the memories of the previous body-bearer, the system was too weak and was once captured by the Divine Combat sect, but the real reason for his appearance in these lands could not be revealed. Therefore, it was only stated that the stranger had encountered problems in cultivation and had come here in search of a suitable place to recover, since the sect had been founded by a man who possessed similar techniques. Hearing this explanation, Feng Boha instantly softened and repentantly admitted his mistake, shifting all responsibility to the deceased Li Heng, who allegedly provoked the conflict by not recognizing the stranger's true status. He now feared the creature standing before him to the point of trembling. The stranger showed generosity, announcing that he had already taught Li Heng a lesson and that this episode could be considered closed. The cult leader noticed that Bai Yang was standing next to the unusual guest, and concluded that she was tall. He emphasized that her rapid success was due to her exceptional talent. After that, the leader officially invited the guest to stay in the sect to regain his strength. The guest agreed, but soon, due to a lack of spiritual energy, the dragon's form dissipated, and he returned to his true form. The leader immediately ordered his disciples to prepare everything necessary for him. Later, one of the disciples reported to the sect leader that the room was ready. When he left, the leader thanked Elder Lin for managing to buy time and create conditions to keep the powerful guest inside the sect, which could be of great benefit in the future. Elder Lin soon appeared in the same room. It turned out that he and the leader were working together to strengthen the sect's position. The leader instructed him to keep an eye on Feng Boha, who could make new mistakes. However, the elder did not have time to carry out the assignment. A student's cry rang out from outside, and he was about to leave when the door suddenly burst open. An unknown silhouette burst into the room, its appearance accompanied by a hollow echo and a heavy threatening voice that sounded even before the figure had fully entered. It seemed that someone had arrived whom no one here expected to see. Feng Boha stood in the doorway, full of rage and despair, when a new figure appeared next to him. The spatial interface flickered, and a demon appeared behind the traitor. Against the backdrop of what was happening, it became clear that the main character of the game world had turned into an entity capable of destroying enemies as easily as cutting fragile branches. After 2 days in a strange world, he was finally able to allow himself to sleep peacefully. However, the peace did not last long. A rift opened in the wall next to him, and a bloodied demon with a twisted blade burst into the room. Judging by the marks, it was an elite representative of its kind. Bai Yang, hearing the noise, rushed to help. But after a few exchanges of blows, she was quickly pushed back. Each subsequent step became more and more difficult for her. The demon, confident in his superiority, decided that this weak sect did not deserve to exist and intended to destroy every last one of them. But at that moment, the dragon, who had taken human form again, entered the fight to protect Bai Yang. The elite early-level demon seemed like a negligible obstacle. The Thousand Hearts technique, which the dragon had mastered, almost nullified the enemy's threat. The demon attempted to deliver a crushing blow with the Ghost Blade Wind technique, a technique capable of killing or seriously injuring anyone who came under its direct attack. However, its weakness was obvious. The direction of the strike could not be changed. While the demon was preparing the technique, the dragon instantly cut him down with one precise blow. The elite died on the spot. Meanwhile, in other parts of the sect, the demonic invasion continued. New victims appeared. One of the disciples, trembling and pale, tried to hold back the approaching demon, but was practically doomed. The demon had already jumped, preparing to deliver a fatal blow, when it was suddenly cut to pieces. A group of disciples intervened in time and saved their comrade. The situation at the sect leader's residence was much worse. Elder Feng Bocha once again openly opposed the leader, mocking his weakness and inability to lead the sect to prosperity. The leader, acknowledging his own shortcomings, nevertheless remained steadfast and reminded everyone that the sect must not be betrayed. Previous leaders had died at the hands of demons, and the current one had no intention of giving in to despair. However, his steadfastness did not save him. The demon's blade pierced the leader's chest from behind. The leader fell. Elder Lin, overcome with rage, tried to attack the killer, but was thrown back with a single blow. He realized that he could not defeat this enemy alone. Then the dragon, still in control of the situation, began to guide Elder Lin, forcing him to change his tactics. Under the guidance of the Thousand Hearts technique, its full power was revealed. As a result, the Elder inflicted several critical wounds on the enemy, and Bai Yang ended the battle by killing the demon with a precise strike. Thus ended the long night. However, the victory came at too high a price. The Divine Combat sect was in ruins. Later, Bai Yang stood at the door, hesitating to enter, but she gathered her courage. After the death of the former leader, Elder Lin proposed appointing her as the new head of the sect. This decision simultaneously gave the system new functionality and opened up an unprecedented path for Bai Yang. Despite the fact that she had shown incredible talent and avenged the leader's death, Bai Yang herself was well aware that the real reason for her appointment was the influence of the dragon standing next to her. The sect's situation was unstable. Disciples were leaving, frightened that the traitor Feng Bocha had managed to escape in the chaos and could now join forces with the demons. In the event of a new attack, the sect's defenses would be useless. To strengthen Bai Yang's position, the dragon decided to give her a gift. He gave her a scroll, the powerful defensive formation, Holy Beginning. Elder Lin was amazed. The formation belonged to the earthly level, surpassing even the profound rank. The only problem was the lack of materials to activate it. Elder Lin volunteered to obtain the missing components and sent his disciples to the nearest Yangxiang pavilion. 2 followers of the sect, accompanied by a dragon, entered. They were met by an arrogant formation master who, upon hearing the name of their sect, dismissively sent them to the back of the line and made it clear that he considered them too insignificant. Another scene was unfolding nearby at that moment. A brother and sister were being expelled from the pavilion. The girl attempted to improve the ancient formation, but the master ridiculed them, claiming that even experienced specialists would not dare to do such a thing. He swung his arm, preparing to strike his brother, but at that moment, the disciples of the Divine Combat sect stopped him. It was then that a notification appeared on the system panel. A fateful person had been detected. Judging by the clues, the main character had stumbled upon a genius of formations, who was to become a key figure in future events. The situation attracted the attention of those around them. People mockingly discussed the girl who dared to touch the work of the senior master, convinced that she was either mistaken or insane. Soon, the chief master of the pavilion appeared, a man of stern appearance and impressive strength of spirit. At first glance, it was difficult to imagine that such a person could be won over, but his appearance meant that the situation was about to take a new turn. His expression softened as he introduced himself in a friendly manner. He said he was a Shu formation master, and asked what had happened here. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Then he remembered his own past humiliation. He had once been an elite formation master in the main pavilion, arrogant and looking down on ordinary people. One day, a young man came to the pavilion and declared that he wanted to become an elite formation master right away. Shu Bo, who was in charge of admissions, not only refused him but also ridiculed his arrogance. No one expected that the young man would actually prove himself capable. He changed 2 high-level formations right on the spot, astonishing everyone present. The young man gained the recognition of the pavilion's master and was directly promoted to elite master. Shu Bo was demoted and sent to this remote pavilion for insulting him. Since then, he has practiced humility and has not repeated those mistakes. He dispersed the onlookers and led them inside the pavilion to inspect the formation. The brother and sister tried to activate the formation again, but it still did not work. Formation Master Shu saw that the changes to the formation did not make logical sense. Only he saw the key. I explained the problem to the older sister and told her to voice it. It turned out that the problem was with the materials. At home, they used unpurified spiritual jade, while the spiritual jade in the Yangxing Pavilion was highly purified and clean. Because of this, the formation lacked some important components. They suggested adding various impurities to the purified spiritual jade. The formation was finally activated. The younger brother was delighted and said that his sister had finally become a formation master. But before he could finish, he lost consciousness. Someone suggested calling the elder to examine him, but another noticed that he did not seem to be ill. The main character took on human form and approached to get a better look at the boy. He asked the formation master Shu to prepare a room. Inside the room, There was a crimson mark on the boy's chest, radiating a black aura. The main character recognized this as a sign of demonic corruption, and the pattern seemed familiar. It reminded me of someone. He asked the worried sister what her brother's name was. Her answer confirmed my suspicions. This boy was Guan Lin, the first boss of the dungeon in the game. In his past life, he had been struck by a demonic artifact, and, consumed by grief over the death of a loved one, had fallen into demonic cultivation. With his high attack and agility, he was incredibly difficult to defeat, and was known as the killer of newbies. The mention of a deceased loved one. Could it have been his sister? His sister was indeed a talented formation master, but I didn't know how she died. He wondered what would happen if I brought them back. The next moment, his sister knelt before him, begging him to save her brother. In the square of the Battle Divine sect, Formation Master Shu was personally setting up a formation for the sect. Although he claimed that he had long admired the sect and wanted to visit it after inspecting the formation they had provided, Elder Lin insisted on helping as well, even without payment. For them, participating in the installation of such a high-level formation was worth more than years of cultivation. The figures that appeared behind them turned out to be the brother and sister whom the main character had brought to the sect. The sister warned Guan Lin not to stray. The boy couldn't believe that they had become part of the immortal sect, and the sister explained that his condition was only temporarily stabilized and could return in the future, which is why the main character had brought them there. Guan Lin vowed to repay the kindness someday. When the main business was settled, the main character was sure that he had made progress in completing the main task. However, the quest panel showed the same thing as before. The number of team members remained 0. Upon further inspection, it turned out that the connection with the character was inactive, and a key item was required to complete it. Guan Lin's characteristics section stated that his abilities were insufficient to join the quest team. This led to the thought that all the effort could have been in vain. At that moment, a noise in the courtyard caught his attention. The brother and sister were trying to clean up, wanting to thank him for his help. Guan Lin, wanting to express his gratitude, handed the main character a jade pendant. This item turned out to be Shu Wan's jade, a mid-level artifact that could only be found in Guan Lin's dungeon. The item received by the main character, although not of the highest class, was suitable for all areas of development. Under the right circumstances, it could have excellent characteristics. In the past, the main character had gone through the Guan Lin dungeon countless times for the same jade pendant. After receiving the pendant, its properties manifested themselves: increased attack power and increased critical strike chance. These were the best attributes that Shaw's jade could have. It was a real stroke of luck. An achievement for obtaining the item appeared, and with it, a reward in the form of an attribute stone. The attribute stone was a special item that could randomly add a characteristic to any mid-level artifact. If it could add critical damage, the pendant would be perfect. The desire to try it was so strong that the main character couldn't hide it, and his silence confused his brother and sister. The main character returned to his room, and soon joy overwhelmed him. Shu Wan's jade did indeed receive a critical damage rating. Even though it wasn't the maximum, it was still a huge stroke of luck. The main character came to the conclusion that the dungeon boss was a real treasure trove. Meanwhile, rumors spread throughout the area about the alleged alliance between the Divine Martial sect and demons. A group of people set out to investigate. At the foot of the mountain, a procession of cultivators from neighboring associations was approaching the sect. The guards recognized them as colleagues from other sects, but they behaved extremely aggressively. When one of the disciples tried to greet the guests, the leader immediately attacked. The disciple was seriously injured and fell. The leader loudly announced that he intended to destroy the Divine Martial sect for its alleged connection with demons. At this time, everyone inside the sect was focused on creating a formation. The group of uninvited guests soon discovered those present and stumbled upon a small defensive formation set up by Master Shu. They considered this an attempt to wipe them off the face of the earth. Among those inside, Buyang stepped forward, demanding an explanation. However, the guests only demanded that the sect leader come out to them. Elder Lin, who appeared, was full of concern. These forces had repeatedly used their power to attack the sect and had once again stirred up conflict. When they tried to destroy the formation and annihilate the sect, Master Shu intervened. His involvement convinced the visitors that he was also involved in an alleged alliance with demons. They demanded an explanation. Only after clarification did it become clear that the misunderstanding was caused by Feng Boha, who had left the sect and joined forces with the demons to attack other sects. The others mistakenly decided that the Divine Martial sect would suffer the same fate. The mistake was acknowledged, and Master Shu removed the formation. At that moment, a wounded disciple was brought in, who had been attacked by the same man at the foot of the mountain. It was strange that the entire sect had been attacked by just one thin silhouette. This man was still trying to stir up conflict. Buyang stepped forward, challenging him. Laughter rose around her. Those present began to say that Bu Yang had only gained fame thanks to Master Shu's intervention. The stranger, who called herself Jiao Yubing, commander of 10,000 warriors, spoke contemptuously of the sect. The main character remembered that this woman was the first mini-boss of the Guanglin dungeon, and was destined to become a subordinate of the demons, just like Feng Boha. Despite her outward righteousness, her path was already predetermined. From the expressions on their faces, it was clear that the guests were still skeptical and were just watching, waiting for the outcome. If Bu Yang failed to suppress the enemy, the sect would find itself in an extremely difficult situation. Kyoikubin demonstrated her cultivation level. Master Shu warned those present that although she looked young, she had lived for almost a century and had reached the 5th level of the middle stage of soul formation. Bu Yang responded in kind, showing her own strength, the 3rd level of the spirit refinement stage. This caused a murmur among the assembled. Such a level at such a young age amazed everyone, and the sect was called a place of true talent. Zhao Yubin contemptuously mentioned that the former leader of the sect had only reached the 4th level of the middle stage of blossoming. Her subordinates also mocked her, but Bu Yang reminded them that the former leader had chosen to die in battle with demons rather than abandon his sect. These words made her rivals' faces darken. Enraged, Zhao Yubin rushed to attack, and Bu Yang hurried to meet the blow. The basic technique, a simple yellow rank technique, surprised everyone. Their own techniques barely reached the low level of yellow rank, while the modified techniques had already reached the middle level of yellow rank. After a brief exchange of blows, Bu Fengyangyan forced her opponent to reveal a weak spot, then quickly knocked Zhao Yubin down with a kick. The surrounding cultivators were also amazed. The protagonist understood that he still needed to continue his development. He was entrusted with leaving this group of people in the care of Senior Lin. After that, the main character returned to his room and saw Guanglin cleaning the courtyard again. It was striking to see the dungeon boss cleaning the courtyard, but the scene itself looked unexpectedly warm. When the main character was still an external disciple, Guanglin seemed to notice something strange. He watched the protagonist closely and sensed a familiar aura. The senior formation master on duty at the observation post reported a gathering of demons near the mountain. Their behavior indicated that they were preparing to attack the divine martial sect. Defense calculations showed that completing the formation would require at least 2 days of continuous work, which posed a serious threat, as there were representatives of different sects on the mountain who were not under unified control. The messenger of the formation master arrived exhausted after clashing with the demons, but managed to deliver the necessary information. At the same time, it became known that the Yang Shui Pavilion token had been completed, which opened up access to a technique that allowed for quick analysis of the principles of any formation. This made it possible to identify weaknesses in the defensive structure and propose an optimization to divide the formation into separate segments and distribute them among the cultivators according to their level of training. This approach significantly accelerated the process and increased the stability of the result. Representatives of other sects who observed the demonstration of knowledge decided to join the divine martial sect, considering such skills to be proof of the high qualifications of its elders. After that, the main group focused on completing the defense, preparing for a possible attack. At the same time, another cultivator engaged in battle with the demons and inflicted heavy damage on one of them, which was accompanied by a loud echo throughout the forest. In a neighboring part of the province, a group of scouts from the Moon Star sect continued to search for traces of demonic activity. The province of Lun of the Seven States was characterized by a low level of spiritual energy and was considered unsuitable for cultivation, as noted by the reconnaissance participants. During their observations, a large cluster of demons was discovered. A horde of about 200 to 300 creatures moved toward the divine martial sect, posing a threat that the small local sects were unable to cope with. Scouts from the Moon Star sect continued to monitor the demons' movements. The scale of the mobilization was puzzling. Usually such detachments could only handle a few dozen opponents, so such a significant concentration of forces seemed suspicious. The question arose, what exactly was the demons' plan, and why did they need such a large group? The horde continued to advance, and soon a small sect was discovered ahead, which became the obvious target of the demonic army's advance. After that, the disciples of the Moonstar sect immediately began to approach the demons, intending to observe the development of the situation. Among them, there were continued dissatisfied comments about the remoteness of the region where this sect was located. It was believed that such a province would never have attracted the attention of the sect alliance if it weren't for one of the disciples' personal hatred of demons. Only this circumstance forced the group to intervene and try to help. Meanwhile, the demons reached the borders of the sect and activated their defensive formation. A huge explosion thundered over the mountain when the shield came into effect. 3 disciples of the Moonstar sect, who were preparing to provide support, stopped in amazement. Their attention was drawn to the formation itself. Against the backdrop of seething spiritual energy, one of the observers was struck by the fact that the defensive technology used by the small sect was on par with that of the Earth rank. This put it on par with the defensive structures of larger and more developed organizations. For a provincial sect, this was almost impossible. Confusion arose among the disciples. According to available information, the Divine Martial Sect did not possess the knowledge or resources to create defensive barriers of this level. The existence of such a structure disrupted the entire familiar picture of forces and hierarchies. The surprise was compounded by the fact that the Moonstar Sect, considered only a third-rate organization, possessed defenses of the same level as the insignificant sect of this province. This contradiction raised many questions that remained unanswered. There was a stir within the demonic army. One of the leaders of the detachment drew attention to the significant losses suffered by his unit after encountering unexpectedly powerful defenses. He blamed his subordinate, who had promised an easy victory in advance and had not bothered to conduct reconnaissance. At that moment, he received a new message. The disciples of the Divine Martial Sect had launched a counterattack. Through the scattered smoke, the figures of cultivators rushing into battle began to appear. Bayan and his accompanying disciples were in the front ranks. The battle unfolded with fierce intensity. Transformation techniques required a great deal of spiritual energy, so their use was extremely inconvenient in prolonged clashes. However, the situation was complicated by the fact that the sect was sheltering the leaders of other small sects, and many of them could be used by demons as human shields. During the battle, the leader of the demonic squad made a swift dash forward, intending to break through the line of defense. His advance was stopped by the sudden appearance of a dragon form, accompanied by a bright burst of spiritual energy. A rapid exchange of blows began between the transformed cultivator and the demon commander. With a single movement, the demon's attack was completely blocked, and the subsequent critical strike destroyed him instantly, leaving no opportunity for a counterattack. The Moonstar Sect disciples watching the battle were amazed by the level of power displayed in this clash. The victory in the battle with the commander broke the demon's fighting spirit and became a turning point in the battle. The demons began to retreat, and the combined forces of the sects managed to finish off the remaining enemies. After the battle ended, there was a sudden change in the atmosphere. A wave of powerful spiritual aura spread around the victorious side. Some cultivators noted that the power they felt was unlike the usual manifestation of energy. According to their observations, the influence of this aura resembled the effect produced by the use of exceptional skills that were inaccessible to ordinary cultivation methods. The attention of those present was drawn to the sword, which was the source of this aura. Under the influence of the released power, the weapon could not withstand it and split in two. This unexpected effect caused excitement among the sect's defenders, as it was perceived as a sign of superiority over the demons and a guarantee of ultimate victory. The realization that even weapons could not withstand the power acting on the side of the defenders significantly strengthened their morale. While the sect was in high spirits, the demonic subordinate Von Bo was in a panic and tried to hide, cursing his boss for the wrong decisions that led to catastrophic losses. The battle continued, and the demon's sudden attempt to strike was completely neutralized. The demon, having lost the initiative, shouted insults, but his aggression had no effect. Zhang Yangyan, who had been watching the incident, assessed the situation with a grim expression and turned her attention to Fan Bo, demanding an explanation for the appearance of the dragon form. Cornered, Fang Bo was forced to make up a story about betrayal and the murder of a disciple, blaming the Divine Martial Sect and seeking sympathy. The disciples of the Moonstar Sect did not have enough information to reach a definitive conclusion. According to their observations, Fan Bo had indeed collaborated with demons, but his words could have been distorted or only partially true. In the end, they decided to compare the conflicting versions and wait for further developments to figure out what really happened. At the same time, an attempt was made to establish contact with Zhang Yangyang, but the connection was never successful. Based on tactical calculations, it was obvious that there was a dragon entity inside the protective formation, representing a force that surpassed the cultivation of all the disciples present. Zhang Yangyang concluded that there were no cultivators among the observers who could directly oppose such an entity. In this regard, the disciples were advised to exercise extreme caution, and at the slightest suspicious action, to use the artifacts issued by the Moonstar Sect, fighting to the last breath. Meanwhile, the Divine Martial Sect was considering the future fate of Fan Bo. The elders and disciples pointed out that the former leader of the sect had died because of Fan Bo's actions while fighting against the demonic invasion. This turned what had happened into a blood debt that needed to be repaid. Representatives of other sects in the vicinity also expressed their desire to pay tribute to the fallen leader, which served as further confirmation of the general position. Fan Bo should be held accountable. This gesture of respect solved an important diplomatic problem. The observation of representatives of other sects ensured that there would be no opportunity to distort the facts or attempt to evade responsibility. The elders of the Divine Martial Sect perceived what was happening as the establishment of a new status for the sect. From that moment on, its position was no longer considered weak or vulnerable. Outside the formation, the disciples of the Moonstar Sect conducted an additional check. No traces of demonic aura or signs of spells were found, confirming the voluntary nature of the actions of the cultivators who protected the Divine Martial Sect. It was suggested that a senior righteous expert capable of suppressing demons was operating nearby. After all the investigations were completed, the cultivator who had participated in the battle returned to his room and opened the system's reward. A bright flash of light illuminated the room, and a tea table made entirely of a single piece of spiritual wood appeared before him. The product naturally emitted spiritual energy and had the ability to heat water for brewing tea. The leaves of the symbiotic tea tree, which were included in the set, allowed one to enhance spiritual perception when consumed. For a region experiencing a shortage of spiritual energy, such an artifact was particularly valuable. The tea table could only be activated by its owner, which made it useless to others. After preparing the tea set, a drink was brewed that had a mild, rich taste and the ability to instantly restore strength. The liquid contained easily digestible spiritual energy. However, the tea drinking process was interrupted by an unexpected knock on the door. Outside was Guan Ling, who reported that Zhang Yangyang, a disciple of the Moon Sect, Star Sect, was requesting an audience and was currently waiting in the courtyard. Upon her arrival, she noted the extraordinary saturation of spiritual energy around the residence, which greatly exceeded the level available in the Moonstar Sect. In her mind, she compared the information she had heard earlier. According to the leader Bu, there was a possibility of a connection between the owner of the residence and the founder of their sect, which made what was happening even more mysterious. At that moment, Guan Ling arrived to escort Zhang Yangyang to the residence. At the same time, it became known that the allied leader had opened access to a secret dimension, which was noted as an important event. While preparing for the meeting, it was noticed that one circumstance had previously escaped attention. After the recent invasion of demons, a significant part of the buildings of the Divine Martial Sect had been damaged. Despite the efforts of Elder Lin, who had arranged many rooms for guests, the conditions were far from ideal. Given that the guest was from the Moonstar Sect, where the requirements for the environment and level of spiritual energy were significantly higher, there was a possibility that the current conditions would cause her dissatisfaction or lower her impression of the sect's status. Upon her arrival, Zhang Yangyan looked around the room. Her inner thoughts revealed her surprise. The room was extremely simple, which led her to believe that the host had no attachment to worldly objects or luxury. Immediately after that, the guest's attention shifted to a piece of furniture in the center of the room, and she was shocked. In front of her was a tea table made entirely from a single piece of sacred wood. In the Moonstar Sect, such material was considered of the highest value and was used exclusively for the creation of high-ranking artifacts. No one dared to use it as an interior decoration, let alone in everyday life. After being shown into the room, there was a short pause. Zhang Yangyan needed time to get over her surprise and assess the situation. After a while, the guest announced the purpose of her visit. She took out a token that looked ancient and didn't give off any spiritual energy. This was precisely why the student had previously been unable to obtain explanations from the elders of her sect. None of them were able to determine the origin of the object or establish its purpose. Given the absence of energy and any kind of aura, the token was considered unremarkable, perhaps even useless. However, further examination led to an unexpected reaction. The appearance of the object resembled a familiar structure, which caused surprise. It was suggested that the token might belong to a category of rare or lost artifacts that could not be analyzed using standard methods. This heightened the intrigue of what was happening and raised new questions about the relationship between the Divine Martial Sect, the Moonstar Sector, and the ancient legacies left by their predecessors. As the token was examined, its true form began to gradually reveal itself. The observer's expression changed, which shocked Zhang Yangyang. Touching the object activated a hidden structure that had previously been concealed under a layer of illusion. The artifact turned out to be well known in ancient archives, the so-called Zhengman Order, associated with a lost line of heritage. Zhang Yangyang explained the origin of the object. According to her records, the token had previously belonged to her mother and was discovered within the Liangyun region of the 7 states. There were only scattered fragments of information indicating the artifact's presumed value, but none of the elders of the Moonstar Sect could determine its nature. Until that moment, the token was considered an ordinary, worthless relic. However, the true purpose of the item was revealed immediately. The Zhengman Order was the key to a special underground dimension, a closed, secret space whose existence was linked to the system. After the artifact was activated, the exact location of this space was determined. turning the token into a treasure of the highest order. At that moment, new news arrived. A bright flash of light appeared in the southwestern part of the sky. Elder Lin suggested that this could be the opening of a secret space, or the manifestation of a valuable artifact. Observation confirmed the connection between the event and the activation of the Xiangman order. The flash was a heavenly sign that appeared when the ancient underground world was opened. The question arose about the division of rights to explore the new space. Since the Moonstar sect was involved in the origin of the token, it was assumed that it also had a share in it. It was decided to discuss the terms of cooperation in a calm atmosphere. After that, Zhang Yangyang and Buyan were invited to the table to wait for the map to be drawn up, which would mark the exact point of entry into the underground world. Both guests raised their teacups and felt the rich spiritual energy of the drink. The taste and effect confirmed that high-level experts used artifacts in their daily lives that were inaccessible to most sects. Meanwhile, in the central square of the Divine Martial Sect, Master Formation Shu was inspecting the defensive structures with his disciples. Yan approached the square and greeted the master. Shu looked wary. He mentally noted that he had previously avoided meeting this person, assuming that he intended to demand something or interfere with his work. Soon, Master Shu remembered the rumors about Guo Feng, a young cultivator with unique abilities to work with formations. It was believed that even at a young age, he surpassed many masters of the older generation. The mention of Guo Feng was accompanied by additional information. Despite his young age, he was considered an outstanding specialist in the field of formations, highly regarded by the Yangshui Pavilion, and subsequently joined the Moonstar sect. He was predicted to have a bright future. The members of the pavilion discussed the current situation with the Divine Martial Sect's defensive formation. The question arose as to whether this structure had really been created by Master Shu. However, it soon became clear that the design belonged to a senior expert, which explained its high level of protection. This aroused suspicion. Some participants suggested that the design could have been stolen or obtained by dishonest means, since a small sect did not have the resources to develop mid-level formations. The instigator of the provocation, a student named Iguang, intended to use the situation to publicly humiliate Master Shu. His goal was to demonstrate his opponent's lack of qualifications while maintaining the appearance of politely seeking advice. He drew an incomplete formation on the ground in advance, containing deliberately introduced errors, and invited Master Shu to analyze it. Master Shu found himself in a difficult position. The trap in the diagram was obvious, and any wrong move would lead to ridicule and a loss of authority for the entire sect. Refusal would also look like an admission of incompetence. A little later, Guan Yu quietly suggested the keyword, demonic foundation, which led Master Shu to think of a non-standard approach to the solution. Gradually, an understanding of the structure emerged. It turned out that the correct option was completely at odds with Iguana's logic, and it was necessary to apply the method mentioned earlier by the senior expert. Master Shu regained his confidence and set to work. Iguana, not receiving an immediate response, tried to finish the provocation, but was stopped at the last moment. Master Shu asked his student for the ash remains he had prepared earlier, and used them as auxiliary material. The ash contained elements of fire and earth, as well as traces of the wood element. This allowed him to balance the properties of the unstable combination, significantly reducing the cost of the construction. It turned out that the pavilion's student, Yang Shui, had a more complex solution in mind. He was going to change the arrangement of several runes and add additional elements. Observing Master Shu's technique completely changed his ideas. During the discussion, those present noticed Guan Yu, whose level of preparedness was higher than expected. This led to another burst of surprise. At the same time, Zhang Yangyan understood the true nature of the conflict. The initiator of the provocation was. Iguana's attempt to make Master Shu look bad didn't work out. She apologized on behalf of her group, taking responsibility for her fellow tribesmen's behavior. Iguana tried to smooth things over by revealing his official position as the chief disciple of the Moon Star sect, but Jiang Yangyan cut him off, pointing out the irrelevance of such titles. After that, the group was invited to stay for a rest and go to the secret space with Bayan the next day. Later, in private, Iguana expressed his confusion. Why were representatives of a prestigious sect forced to show respect to a dragon and a local expert? Zhang Yangyan's answer was extremely serious. The entity known as Senior M should not be perceived as an ordinary cultivator. Any frivolous attitude towards such a figure could have unpredictable consequences. After that, Zhang Yangyan returned to her quarters and continued her cultivation, reflecting on what had happened and acknowledging the extraordinary power hidden behind the calm appearance of the senior expert. The situation in the forest surrounding the secret space continued to escalate. Representatives of the 10,000 Swords Pavilion noticed the hidden group and attempted to prevent their departure. A burst of spiritual energy blocked the path of several people, demonstrating the typical manner of strong cultivators to suppress those around them with a single movement of power. However, a disciple of the Cold Smoke Pavilion soon ran up and reported another group, 2 men and 2 women who, apparently, had the map. This news instantly caught the attention of everyone present, and the crowd headed in the indicated direction. At this time, Buyan and his companions continued their search for the entrance to the secret world, checking the map they had received earlier. Several observers were hiding in the forest, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Among them was a daring cultivator who tried to block Buyan's group's path, but was instantly suppressed. The threat disappeared so quickly that the remaining observers chose not to take any further action. Shortly after a brief exchange of information, Buyan and his group realized that they were being watched by a significant number of outsiders. To avoid further conflict, their official affiliations were revealed: the Moon Star Sect, the Divine Martial Sect, and allied structures. This immediately eased some of the tension. After that, representatives of the Alliance, who recognized Fanyan among them, joined the search party. The disciples of the Cold Smoke Pavilion also wanted to participate, but the oppressive glances of the members of the major sects forced them to retreat and keep their distance. Meanwhile, a creature with innate wings was observed in the sky, secretly monitoring the events from above. A faint glimmer of light, previously associated with the activation of the Shangman Order, was spotted. It made it clear that Buyan's group was close to their goal. And so it was. Soon, a hidden entrance to a secret space was found. The activator was placed in the appropriate recess, after which the gates shook and began to slowly open. The structure was camouflaged and dangerous. The entrance was equipped with mechanisms that reacted to approaching objects. An energy flash emanated from the depths of the portal, and at that moment, Jiang Yangyan sensed a sharp surge of danger. An instinctive warning saved those present. A bright burst of sword energy pierced the space, nearly destroying those who stood in front of the passage. It was only thanks to her recent breakthrough in cultivation that Jiang Yangyan was able to notice the attack before the others. After the situation stabilized, Buyan and the others entered the secret world. Almost immediately after their disappearance, other cultivators appeared on the territory, discussing the possible origin of the place. One assumption was that the secret space might belong to a lone swordsman. This guess was confirmed by the appearance of an older swordsman named Qing Yuanzi. He was a wandering cultivator who did not belong to any school. Despite a century of practice, his progress had long been slow, but a fateful encounter with a pair of legendary bottomless swords dramatically changed his path, making him a figure of respect and fear. The disciples of the Cold Smoke Pavilion remembered that they had previously invited him to become an elder, but he had refused. Now it became clear that it was this secret world that had attracted his interest. Qing Yuanzi made no secret of his intentions and joined the group, approaching the entrance. Like the others before him, he encountered the same defense mechanism, a sudden sword strike that crashed into the entrance. The swordsman easily parried the attack with a light movement of his blades, after which the barrier opened, confirming his skill. Inside the secret space, Buyan and his team were exposed to dense streams of sword energy. The stone statues, which served as sources of directed sword intent, created conditions comparable to training under the guidance of a swordmaster. Cultivators of the appropriate level used this as a means of improvement. However, 3 of the group did not have sufficient stability and could only watch from the sidelines. After a while, the senior swordsman entered with the disciples of the Cold Smoke Pavilion. At the sight of the stone figures and the concentration of sword energy, they felt a sense of awe. At that moment, the statues came to life and attacked Buyan. Thanks to his quick reaction, he managed to dodge, but another statue directed a blow at Jiang Yangyang. Only the intervention of a prearranged ally saved her from serious injury. Inside the secret space, the situation was rapidly escalating. The stone statues filled with sword energy continued to attack the arriving cultivators. Those who accompanied Buyan tried to shield him from the threat, although their own strength clearly did not match the level of danger. They acted more out of desperation and misjudged bravery than actual combat training. At this time, representatives of the sects clashed with Jiang Zhang, followed by taunts and attempts to provoke conflict. Unexpectedly, one of the cultivators, dressed in simple secular clothing, snatched a sword from his comrade's hands and dealt a fatal blow to one of the disciples. This action did not belong to the perpetrator himself. His movement was imbued with an alien force that seemed to manipulate his body. 2 other cultivators experienced the same effect. Their swords spun out of control and pierced the disciples of both sects in succession. Only then did the elderly swordsman notice a vague outline of a figure behind the performer, a sign of the intervention of an unknown force. Realizing the threat, he tried to leave the scene. The remaining disciples rushed to Luanyu in panic, hoping to receive protection, but he, realizing that his opponents had the support of a more powerful being, immediately fled, leaving them to their fate. As he approached the exit from the secret world, a figure appeared silently and suddenly, blocking his path. Luan, who had a bad reputation, had suffered humiliation and bullying in the past because of his weak cultivation. Only unexpected luck in adulthood led to him gaining power, but this did not change his character. On the contrary, he became cruel and vengeful, hunting the weak and killing for profit. Mistakenly assuming that he was only facing a defender of young disciples, Luo tried to strike with a magical tool. But before the technique was completed, Luoan's body was pinned to the wall by a burst of sword energy. The observer's improvement in overall cultivation over the past few days, which had occurred under the influence of spiritual tea, had significantly increased his combat potential, making such actions extremely easy. In desperation, Luoan tried to use the child who had suddenly appeared nearby. He grabbed the boy and pressed the blade to his neck, trying to create a threat that would stop his pursuer. However, it suddenly became clear that the sword in Luoan's hands was trembling, disobeying its master. In the next second, a new burst of sword energy pierced the criminal's chest, inflicting a serious wound. The boy's abilities also turned out to be non-trivial. The child's body possessed the characteristics of a natural sword body, which influenced the behavior of swords and energy flows around him. This explained why even legendary swords reacted to his presence. Nearby was an attribute panel indicating the boy's potential, which made the prospect of his training extremely attractive. At the same time, Iguana finished suppressing the remaining sect disciples and headed towards Buyan. The group advanced deeper into the secret space, passing through level after level. The closer they got to the center, the more difficult it became to move. The resistance of the space grew, and the density of the sword energy intensified. After overcoming 2 barriers, the travelers reached the heart of the secret world. In the center stood a stone monument, on top of which stood the figure of an unknown man. This man was the first to break the silence, announcing the violation of the boundaries of the secret space. While the group members were trying to determine whether he was the guardian of this world, the stranger suddenly rushed towards them, and his attack was accompanied by a powerful concentration of yuan energy. In the center of the secret space, sword energy suddenly appeared, as if materialized out of thin air, and rushed towards the group of cultivators. Zhang Zhen reacted first and managed to block the blow, but Buyan was still nearly injured. The energy flow continued its movement and with a powerful sound threw Shayna several meters away, sending her crashing to the ground. The difference in power levels became immediately apparent. The opponent's technique was outwardly the same as that used in previous tests, but its power was many times greater. This indicated a qualitatively different level of mastery of sword energy. The participants in the test noticed that the stranger had unwittingly revealed his knowledge of the senior expert, whose methods they had encountered before. His attempt to hide his slip of the tongue did not inspire confidence. Those present understood that the source of his power was clearly connected to a higher-ranking figure. At this time, far from the secret world, calm reigned within the Shengnu sect. The main mission of the system was 3/4 complete, and this was accompanied by a feeling of favorable progress. Junzhan, who had previously been seen in the secret space, attracted particular attention. According to reports, he had extremely low innate talent, but at the same time was the bearer of a rare innate sword body. In his past life, he had spent decades trying to develop his strength, but only at the end of his journey did he realize the truth of the sword Dao. Faced with a limited lifespan, he used a forbidden ice technique in an attempt to be reborn. After explaining the nature of his past, Zhu Yinzhan was surprised. The information presented about him exceeded what he knew about himself. This prompted recognition from the system. The connection between mentor and disciple was finally established, and the main mission advanced even further. The cold and bottomless sword obtained in the secret world was to be kept for personal use, while the other sword was to be placed in the treasury. However, during a visit to the treasury, an important omission was discovered. Unlike large organizations that had developed over centuries, the Shenu sect lacked fundamental resources. There were no fields of spiritual plants, spiritual beasts, mines, deposits of spirit stones, protective and accumulative formations, or stable sources of spiritual energy. For a comfortable life and effective development, such a sect required systematic modernization. Therefore, it was decided to accelerate progress by using a new feature of the system, the sect's updated hidden space. Inside it were spiritual stones necessary for future growth. The system also allowed other sects to access the secret space by purchasing entrance tickets, creating a new source of resources. Meanwhile, Bayan and his group returned to the outer territory where Yuan, known for his complex reputation, was located. He studied the spiritual stones, considering them unprotected due to the sect's weakness. However, he was soon taken to the treasury, where he saw the Shenu sect's hidden space system unfolding before him, a new feature that had just been unlocked. Meanwhile, the protective formation was activated. The eyes of the stone statues lit up, signaling that someone had invaded in search of treasure. Representatives of the Kun sect appeared, including the Grand Elder, who was considered an extremely dangerous person, and Formation Master Zhong, who arrived with Master Shu and Guan Yu. Rumors about the situation in the Shengnu sect spread quickly, attracting the attention of numerous parties. Inside the Moonstar sect, Zhang Jian provided a report on the situation of the Shengnu sect, including the demon attack. The white-haired elder was skeptical of the information, believing that the sect was facing retribution for its own mistakes. However, the sect leader made the opposite decision. He expressed his support and allowed the disciples to use the Shengnu sect's secret space to increase their power. Yuan, who accompanied the elder, was instructed to keep an eye on Jiang Jian. The elder suspected that she might have rare resources or items related to the spirit beast. This aroused Yuan's greed. After some time, Jiang Jian arrived at the Shengnu sect with gifts and an official letter. Among the offerings was a dark stone, which was immediately recognized as crystallized poison, a type of substance used by demons. This raised new questions about the nature of the threat. Meanwhile, the story of a local cultivator, previously introduced as Meng Fio, more precisely Chen Nan, was revealed. He was in a ruined temple, immersed in memories. In the past, he was an ordinary person from the century who lived in Enin and played mobile games. Fate suddenly transported him to another world, but due to his rare physical structure, the beginning of his journey proved to be extremely difficult. Chen Nan's journey through the world of cultivation was accompanied by constant persecution. The body he received after reincarnation had the special ability of a cultivation melting furnace, which attracted spiritual beasts and demons. This physical structure aroused a strong hunting instinct in monsters. Even the lowest creatures sought to attack, and powerful demons felt a special interest in such a target. At the same time, representatives of various sects also showed no mercy. Against the backdrop of the universal desire for immortality, the value of an unusual physical body was perceived as an opportunity to gain benefits or acquire power by any means. Everyone who learned of the existence of such a body saw it as a potential source of personal advancement